What if I told you that your food isn't just calories? What if it's actually a set of instructions, a literal blueprint for your health? Well, it is, and it's built from three core components called macronutrients. Today, we're going to decode that blueprint and figure out how to build a longer, healthier life.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the basics, the body's building blocks. Then we'll see how different diets use those blocks and uncover why quality is so much more important than quantity. And finally, we'll pull it all together into a blueprint for longevity that can work for you at any age. Let's get into it.
All right, first things first. Every great structure starts with quality materials, right? So before we can start building, we need to understand our team. What exactly are these building blocks?
Okay, so macronutrients. These are the big three: protein, carbohydrates, and fats. You can think of them as the bulk materials for our bodies. You know how we need vitamins and minerals in tiny amounts? Well, we need these in large quantities every single day for energy and for, well, building and repairing literally everything inside us.
Let's think of this like a construction team for your body. Protein, that's your engineers and your structural steel. They're the ones building and repairing all your tissues. Then you've got carbohydrates. They're the high-octane fuel that powers the whole work site. It's the body's absolute favorite quick-access energy. And fats, they're the long-term battery packs, providing super dense energy storage and even forming the walls of our cells.
So we've met our construction team. But just like in the real world, there are a whole lot of different blueprints out there. Let's take a look at how different diets use these macronutrients, because, and this is key, not all of them build the same kind of structure.
Okay, this side-by-side comparison is wow. It's really revealing. We're looking at two totally different blueprints: the whole food plant-based diet, or WFPB, and the typical Western diet. The thing that should just jump right off the page at you is that saturated fat column. One approach keeps it incredibly low, while the other is consistently high. And that single difference, my friends, is a major clue.
And here's why that number matters so much. Pretty much all major health organizations recommend keeping saturated fat below 10% of our daily energy. As you can see, the typical Western diet blows right past that limit day in and day out. The whole food plant-based approach, on the other hand, it naturally keeps you in that safe recommended range without you even having to think about it.
So when you boil it all down, it comes to this fundamental difference in fuel. The plant-based blueprint runs on high-fiber, complex carbs from whole foods. The Western blueprint runs on refined carbs, low fiber, and a whole lot of saturated fat. They are two completely different construction plans, and as you can imagine, they lead to two very, very different outcomes.
This brings us to what might be the single most important idea in this entire explainer. It's not just about hitting certain percentages on a chart. It is all about the quality and the source of those macronutrients. So let's ask the critical question. What's the big deal? Why is this one type of fat such a villain in the story? Well, to understand that, we have to zoom in and see what's happening deep, deep inside our cells.
There's this process called lipotoxicity. When we eat too much saturated fat, these toxic byproducts start to build up inside our muscle and liver cells. These things, called ceramides, basically act like static on a radio, and they disrupt the signal from the hormone insulin. When that signal gets blocked, our cells can no longer pull glucose out of our blood properly, and that right there is the very definition of insulin resistance.
So the type of fat we eat directly messes with our cells' ability to communicate. But it turns out the exact same thing is true for protein. The quality of our structural steel also sends these powerful signals that can literally influence how we age.
See, plant proteins have a really unique amino acid profile. They're naturally lower in a few specific ones, and because of that, they have this fascinating effect. They gently dial down some powerful growth signaling pathways in our bodies, like mTOR and IGF-1. You can think of these as grow fast and die young signals. And the research is really consistent here. Slowing down these signals is one of the key mechanisms for extending lifespan.
Okay, so let's move on and see how this focus on quality, on choosing the right building materials, translates into real-world, tangible outcomes for our health and, you guessed it, our longevity.
The data here is just incredibly compelling. Following this plant-based blueprint is associated with a 19% reduction in the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That's a massive, life-altering impact, driven simply by the quality of the food we choose to eat.
And if you thought that was impressive, get this. The impact on metabolic health is even more staggering.
High adherence to this dietary pattern has been shown to cut the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by nearly 50%, half. And it's not a coincidence, it's because it directly fixes the root cause we just talked about, that insulin resistance driven by lipotoxicity.
This quote from the research, it really just says it all, doesn't it? It's not about one specific disease. The evidence shows that the more you stick to this way of eating, prioritizing high-quality macros from plants, the lower your risk of dying from any cause. It's a complete system-wide upgrade.
And this is where things get truly fascinating. The benefits might even go all the way down to our actual DNA. Research is suggesting that this dietary pattern can help protect and maybe even lengthen our telomeres. Those are the little protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes that get shorter as we age. So in essence, it's like slowing down the biological clock at a genetic level. Pretty amazing.
So, is this blueprint just for middle-aged adults or some specific group? Absolutely not. Let's look at how this approach supports peak health across the entire human lifespan. From infancy and childhood, right through adolescence, into adulthood, and even in our later years, the evidence is just remarkably consistent. Major health organizations all over the world agree that a well-planned, whole-food, plant-based diet isn't just good enough, it can be optimally healthy for every single stage of life.
Now, the key to making this blueprint work flawlessly is just some mindful planning. This isn't about restriction, it's about being smart. All it means is paying a little attention to a couple of key nutrients, like vitamin B12 and vitamin D, which do need supplementation, to make sure the body has absolutely everything it needs to thrive. It's a simple step for a huge payoff.
So, there you have it. The science shows us a really clear blueprint for building a longer, healthier life. It's not based on fads or magic pills, but on the fundamental quality of our macronutrients, our building blocks. The construction materials are available to all of us. The only question left is, what will you choose to build?